Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Thanks, Sherry, and thank you, Global Patties. You know, each week we get to talk about how much we appreciate our sponsor support, and we know you'd rather we get right to talking about beekeeping. However, our great sponsors are critical to help making all of this happen. From the transcripts, the hosting fees, the software, the hardware, the microphones, the subscriptions, the recorders, they enable each episode. So with that, thanks to Bee Culture Magazine for continuing their presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture has been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We're really happy you're here. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to subscribe or follow Beekeeping Today podcast and give us a 5-star rating. It really does help. Also, we are now adding complete transcripts of each episode on the website after the show notes. Check them out. You can also leave questions and comments online under each show. You can leave a comment, ask a question, reply to a question, ours or listeners. Click on Leave a Comment at the top of the episode's show notes to join the discussion. Have you listened to an episode and thought, that person sounds really interesting, and I'd like to know more about them? Well, now you can. Each episode links to a guest profile. Each profile has a guest photo, bio, contact information, including Instagram and Twitter details if they have them. Check it out. And finally, share the podcast with your beekeeping friends, email them links, or mention it at your next beekeeper meeting. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening, and before I forget, Happy New Year! Today, I welcome Danny Weaver to the show. Danny comes from a long line of queen breeders and beekeepers in the Navasota, Texas area. Danny's father, Binford, was instrumental in working with Congress to establish the National Honey Board in 1987. The Weaver name is long established and trusted in beekeeping. Today, Danny talks with me about his current queen breeding operation producing varroa-resistant bees, as well as the Bee Weaver farm in Navasota. The farm offers a bee experience for non-beekeepers through tours and screen-enclosed demonstrations. The farm also includes a market, a meadery, and a campground. Danny's operation could be a model for many beekeepers, so stand by. I'm confident there is something here for everybody. What are you looking forward to in your bee operation in 2023? Are you expanding, holding the same, or downsizing? Now's the time to start ordering your packages and nukes in order to lock them in for early pricing. Also, ordering new equipment now will prevent last-minute scrambling to knock together your purchased woodenware. We happen to know a great supplier of ready-assembled hive kits and pre-built hives, if you're wondering where to order your equipment this year. Thumbing through and earmarking pages of a bee supply catalog is a fun way to pass along a winter's evening. Maybe you're focusing on getting certified with your local or state organization as an apprentice, journeyman, or even a master beekeeper. Maybe you'll sign up for a university certification this year, such as from the University of Montana or Cornell or many others. Formal education is a good thing to keep your skills and knowledge sharp, up to date, plus provide the ability to spot good advice from bad advice. Speaking of education, even if you've been keeping bees for several years, having a mentor is valuable. Everyone's experience with bees is different. A mentor's observation about your colonies or management techniques may save you time, money, and bees. And even if you have a mentor, become a mentor to another beekeeper. Pass along what you know. Not everything can be learned on YouTube or a podcast for that matter. Starting a new year and a new season brings much hope and anticipation. It is an exciting time. So from Kim and me, here's to your success in 2023. May your year be rewarding and rich in honeybees.
Hey, beekeepers! Many times during the year, honeybees encounter scarcity of floral sources. As good beekeepers, we feed our bees artificial diets of protein and carbohydrates to keep them going during those stressful times. What is missing, though, are key components. The good microbes necessary for a bee to digest the food and convert it into metabolic energy. Only Super DFM honeybee by strong microbials can provide the necessary microbes to optimally convert the artificial diet into energy necessary for improving longevity, reproduction, immunity, and much more. Super DFM Honeybee is an all-natural probiotic supplement for your honeybees. Find it at strongmicrobials.com or at fine bee supply stores everywhere.
And while you're at the Strong Microbial site, make sure you click on and subscribe to The Hive, the regular newsletter full of interesting beekeeping facts and product updates. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Sitting across the virtual Zoom table right now, I've known Danny for a long time. I think I met you back in 1993 at the Kansas City American Beekeeping Federation meeting. But Danny Weaver, welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast.
Hey, good to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's been a long time. I should have invited you sooner. The Weaver name has a long history in the beekeeping industry. And for our listeners who may not know of the Weaver name, and can you give us a little bit of history of the longstanding Weaver name, and then we'll talk about what you're doing there at the Weaver Farms.
When my great-grandparents, Zach Weaver and Florence Summerford, got married, they got a wedding gift of 10 hives of honeybees from my great-grandmother's brother, Frank, who'd been keeping bees in Texas for about 10 years prior to that. So beekeeping's been in the Weaver family since 1888, and I got involved when I was a kid. And my dad thought that I had spent enough time watching cartoons on Saturday morning. He got me out in the queen yard catching queens when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And it's sort of in my blood at this point, I think. I think I've been envenomated by enough stings that I'm addicted. I find beekeeping fascinating. Weaver Apiaries was the old family operations name until my dad and I reorganized it and renamed it Bee Weaver Apiaries in 1995. So we're operating headquartered in Navasota, Texas, and our office is in Austin, Texas.
Your father, for those who've been around in the beekeeping business, was Binford Weaver, right? And so if anybody's been in the business that long, he was your dad, and your mother was Benny.
That's right. Benny Lou Weaver. Yep. Binford and Benny Lou.
And they were a force in the beekeeping industry for a long time.
Yeah, my dad was deeply involved in many, many different aspects of beekeeping, including the national organizations. And he went to Washington, and I'll say, he obviously had help from Congress people and lobbyists that were hired by interested beekeepers, but he gets the lion's share of the credit for the National Honey Board being established pursuant to an act of Congress. He was good friends with Kika de la Garza, the longtime Democratic congressman with a lot of clout in the Rio Grande Valley. And so he and Kika partnered and got it done. And he was a president of the American Beekeeping Federation. He was one of the founding directors of the Foundation for the Preservation of Honeybees. It just goes on and on. I mean, he had a very storied career.
I'll have to say I was very honored to have met him and talked to him on multiple occasions. Quite a guy in the beekeeping industry. So what are you doing today in the beekeeping world? I mean, you're still active? You're still busy?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I don't really have a yearning to retire yet because I still find beekeeping fascinating, and particularly the process of rearing queens, breeding queens. And I have a background in biology and genetics and genomics. So I'm very, very much into that side of things. And I guess I'm most consumed by my ongoing efforts with a population of honeybees that I've developed here at Bee Weaver that are resistant to varroa mites and honeybee viruses. And I continue to make that one of the focal points of our efforts as a company and my efforts as a honeybee research scientist.
You have a long-standing history with queens and package bees, and also with the buckfast bee as well. Can you talk a little bit about the buckfast bee and Weaver Farms?
Sure. So my uncle, Roy Stanley Weaver Jr., made contact with Brother Adam at Apimondia conferences in the early 1960s. And by 1967, we had struck a deal with Brother Adam to produce buckfast queens here in the United States for the North American market, and then subsequently worldwide, because Brother Adam just couldn't produce enough queens to handle all the demand he had in terms of requests for breeder queens and so forth. So actually, in buckfast bees, in case people are not familiar with them, were noted for their resistance to acarine disease, or the parasitic mite Acarapis woodi, which lives in the trachea of honeybees and had caused a devastating colony collapse in Europe and England back in the early part of the 20th century. And Brother Adam had found some colonies that had survived the devastation of acarine disease, and it was called the Isle of Wight disease because it seemed to have originated there, at least in Great Britain. So he took the surviving colonies on the Isle of Wight and used those to establish a breeding program, which he grew over the years. And he incorporated other stocks and other lines of honeybees from around the world. And buckfast were known for their hardiness and their winter survival abilities. They were very, very good at coping with harsh climatic conditions, and those queens knew when to stop laying in order to conserve colony resources, and they didn't start laying too early and burn through all their honey before more pollen and nectar sources became available in the springtime.
The beekeepers today may recognize that mite as the tracheal mite.
Yep, that's right. And so, the buckfast are definitely blended in to the super mongrelized population of honeybees that I've got now. They've got all major subspecies of honeybees in their lineage. Apis mellifera mellifera, the bee of northern Europe. Some people call it the black bee. Apis mellifera ligustica, Apis mellifera carnica, Apis mellifera caucasica, and Apis mellifera scutellata. So there is also a signal from the New World African bees in our stock as well, because it was unavoidable back in the 1990s when Africanized bees swept across the Rio Grande and then moved through Texas like a wildfire to have some genetic introgression. But in any event, we're not worried about that because our bees, I believe, are very, very gentle at this point, and there's no issue with respect to stinging behavior that and what has been associated with Africanized honeybees. So when I say that, some people get alarmed. Oh, you've got Africanized honeybees. Well, no, I've got a genetic signal from Africanized honeybees, not the behavioral trait people find so objectionable. So again, all four major subspecies, Apis mellifera mellifera, Apis mellifera ligustica, Apis mellifera caucasica, and Apis mellifera scutellata, are present in our population.
So you're raising a bee that you said the queens that are varroa resistant and the varroa disease resistant? I understood that correctly?
Yeah, varroa resistant, so they don't succumb to varroa mites. That doesn't mean that they don't have varroa mites in the colony, but those varroa mite populations don't increase to the point where they cause colony mortality or loss of colony productivity. So there's several things that my bees they're just plain different than most commercial stocks of honeybees, and they're really good about detecting infested brood and then removing the pupae that are heavily infested, hauling them out of the hive. And they're also really good at grooming and chewing their sisters. And they have a slightly shorter developmental time than most Western honeybees. And that's probably a legacy of the Africanized honeybee influence.
I was just getting ready to say that sounds strangely like the Africanized bee. While we're on that topic, are they a little bit smaller like the Africanized bee?
They are. Yeah, if you put the average queen that we produce in a colony and look at the size of her bees compared to the size of honeybees that are produced by, like, say, an Italian stock from Florida or California, you'll note that our bees are a little bit smaller. Probably also observe that the populations are a little larger. So the number of bees that are actually in a colony will be more too. So one of the other attributes that we've recently elucidated with some research is our honeybees are also immunologically and physiologically different in terms of the genes that they turn on or upregulate in response to varroa mite parasitism and honeybee virus infection. And that's one of the things that helps deliver the viral resistance traits that they have.
How does that happen?
The story is really short and sweet if you think about it. It's the James Bond theory of bee breeding, live and let die. So I started selecting from colonies that did not succumb to varroa mites, even though I wasn't treating them with the acaricides or the poisons that kill varroa mites, but also usually have deleterious effects on honeybees in the colony as well. So by selecting from those bees, and over a number of generations, it took about 10 years to get to the point where we were really satisfied that we had a genuine varroa mite resistant honeybee. But along the way, I also observed that if there were lots of deformed wing bees in the colony, I didn't have to wait for the colony to show signs of parasitic mite syndrome or collapse from varroa mite. I knew that that was a sign that that colony was not going to make it. And so I began to select against colonies and queens that had significant numbers of deformed wing bees. And again, these are all in colonies that are not being treated or managed for varroa control whatsoever. The only thing that I was doing was requeening. That's the only means of amelioration of varroa mite infestation that I would employ. So if I found a colony heavily infested with varroa mites, I'd requeen it.
Now, was that requeening to get a new bloodline in that hive?
Yeah, just because I believe that with every subsequent generation, I was likely to have increased varroa resistance. And that has proven to be the case. And that's what I've relied on now for we got it rolling in 1992. That's when I started that program. So that's been 30 years now.
That's really good. And how many queens do you produce a season or in a year?
We don't really like to talk about that. That's kind of a trade secret, but it's
lots.
It's lots.
With a capital L?
Well, we don't produce as many as we once did, though. We're smaller than we once were. And I decided to focus less on the bulk commercial production and just make sure that the queens we were producing were all, to the maximal extent possible, very varroa and virus resistant and remain very, very productive, too. That's the other thing that I'm very proud of. I think our bees will produce as much honey, collect as much pollen as anything else you can find out there.
You also produce packages.
And also nuclei, colony nuclei. We produce lots and lots of colony nuclei every spring.
All right. Do you ship those up north then for outlets? Are people picking them up? Or how do people get a hold of your bees?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's another way that the business has evolved. So back in the early 2005 timeframe, let's say, it became clear that we could no longer rely on common carriers and the U.S. Postal Service to get package bees to people alive. We were losing lots and lots of packages. I made a brief foray into running a logistics business where we were actually transporting bees ourselves around the country and decided I didn't want to be in the trucking business. And so for the last several years, if people want to get our colonies, they've got to come down and get them. They got to come down and pick them up. We no longer put them in the mail. So, it makes sense if you're going to order packages for your bee club, maybe, or your state bee association, send a truck down, and we can load you up and take care of you that way. But we no longer ship packages to people like we once did. And I know that's an inconvenience, but we try to stand behind our product and take care of any problems that may occur in transit. But we just couldn't absorb the losses that we were experiencing because of the U.S. Postal Service got really, really good at killing honeybees. UPS wasn't much better. So
yeah. And the nukes, of course, are pick up on site as well.
They are. Yep.
Your work on the genetics, are you working by yourself or you work along with a university? How are you exploring that?
I've had a number of collaborators over the years. Right now, I've got a small business innovation research grant from USDA to continue and extend the work that I've done selecting for virus and mite-resistant honeybees. And that's being done in collaboration with the USDA Bee Lab in Baton Rouge and the USDA Bee Lab in Beltsville, Maryland. Michael Simone Finstrom, Jay Evans, Judy Chin, and that crew. And we're taking a new approach. The Small Business Innovative Research Grant was awarded in order to provide proof of concept for a new way to achieve what I did, only instead of it taking 10 years, we believe using this new technology, we'll be able to reduce the time that it would take people to develop varroa resistance in their own stocks to 2, 3, 4 years. But that remains to be seen because we just embarked on this research effort. But I'm really excited about it, and it's kind of cool too. So Jay Evans and his colleagues at the USDA Bee Lab in Beltsville, Maryland, developed a deformed wing virus clone that has a fluorescent reporter gene tagged to the end of the viral genome. And you can inject that construct into a drone, for instance, and then 48 hours later, if the virus is replicated, that drone will glow in the dark under ultraviolet illumination. Now, you don't want the glow-in-the-dark drones because they're the ones that have lots of virus. But on the other hand, if you can inject drones and they don't glow in the dark, those are the ones you want. And then we're going to collect semen from those, use that to artificially inseminate queens for the subsequent generation. So we believe doing that way, we're going to be able to make a lot more progress a lot faster than the old-fashioned way, the James Bond method that I used. So we'll see how that works out. But that might be a way for other beekeepers who want to acquire or develop viral resistance in their own stocks to do so. And we haven't decided whether we're going to license the technology and the methodology or whether we're going to instead offer this as a service for other queen breeders. If they want to put varroa virus resistance traits into their own stock, then we could work with them to do that. So I look forward to getting feedback from beekeepers and queen breeders around the country about which of those two paths they might find most intriguing.
When do you foresee that being available for other queen breeders?
As I said, I just got the award,
Right.
and by the time the money was made available to me, well, the queen breeding season for this year was almost over. So we probably won't have any results, any good, firm final results from the Phase 1 award until the end of next year or the first part of spring of 2024.
Okay. About a year from now.
We already have some encouraging indicators that, yes, we're on the right track and that this will work. And I believe Jay Evans or Michael Simone Finstrom, or both of them, are going to be saying a little bit about this at the Jacksonville meeting, the American Beekeeping Federation meeting, Jacksonville, Florida.
That's exciting research, and that'll be really a very useful tool for queen breeders and for those who are trying to develop a better defense against the varroa, which is just devastating for everybody involved. Hey, Danny, this sounds like a great time to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll hear about the rest of your businesses.
Hi, we're starting the winter holiday celebrations. Nothing is better for a stocking stuffer, hostess gift, or party favor than honey, homemade hand cream, candles, or lip balm. If you want to learn how to craft these or other products of the hive, such as beeswax, you can visit betterbee.com for tips, tricks, and products made by love, by you and your honeybees. So from all of us at Better Bee, we wish you wonderful winter holidays and terrific celebrations.
So we've heard about the queen business and the package business, which is the historical part of Bee Weaver Farms, but you've expanded your businesses in the last, a bunch of years, I don't know exactly how many years, to other aspects of the bee business. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that's really fascinating. That's an area where other beekeepers are exploring potentials.
So I'll try to describe the various aspects of the business that we are now engaged in and the new areas that we've moved into. And I'll try to deliver it in sort of an accurate temporal fashion about what we got into first and how that changed and evolved into where we went next. But it may get a little chaotic, okay? But we'll just begin by saying that back in the early 1990s, it became clear that a lot of our customers who would come and pick up packages or come and buy colonies from us or come and get queens from us probably didn't know as much as they should about beekeeping in order to be successful in the enterprise. So we began hosting field days where people could come out and we would spend the day working through colonies of honeybees, showing them how to hive packages, find queens, evaluate colonies, identify disease, manage problems and prepare colonies for a honey flow, harvest honey. And so that became a business. I mean, before you know it, we had so much demand that now we offer private lessons, beekeeping experiences, even for just the general public who want to come out and learn more about honeybees. So we have a venue here attached to the headquarters operation that is a honeybee observation area where people can come in, and we'll put them in a little screened enclosure, and we have colonies outside the screened enclosure, and then we can show them about the inside of a honeybee without risking them getting stung or them putting on appropriate personal protective gear. On the other hand, we also do the private lesson thing where we really get down and dirty, and then we offer a variety of courses. For instance, we're concluding one this month that has provided a new educational experience once a month for the entire year. And that's our stewardship program. We feel like the people who've been through that and have graduated from that are probably going to have been exposed to many different aspects of the beekeeping business, from establishing a colony to preparing a colony to be productive, identifying honey plants in the area, supering colonies, taking off honey, extracting honey, bottling honey, harvesting wax, melting wax, and just go and cooking with honey, making honey infusions. So that program is really good. And then we have a queen rearing course that we teach as well for those beekeepers who think they want to become more deeply involved in producing their own queens. So that's been one successful aspect. From there, we realized that we had a lot of these people that we were now educating, but they didn't really know. They wanted to have a local source for beekeeping equipment. So we opened a retail store and we started selling beekeeping equipment to beekeepers. And that grew to the point where we then decided, okay, we can expand beyond just basic beekeeping equipment. And so our retail store now has all things bees, okay? From knickknacks to food prepared with honey varieties from all over the world, including all the different varieties that we produce. And I'm quite frankly amazed at how well it's done. We also have a commercial kitchen associated with bee weaver apiaries, and we have a lovely, if I do say so myself, facility where people can come out and hang out, enjoy the great outdoors, and play games, have a picnic, enjoy food. And we have co-located on the premises Wildflower Mead Company, and we're making mead at Wildflower. So if people want to try a craft honey wine beverage, well, we offer that as well.
And I will tell for our listeners that you're sitting in the, I don't want to call it the workshop, but the warehouse.
It's the production area at Wildflower area. You can see the fermentation tanks behind me. I think you can anyway. I don't know.
Let's see if I can take a quick screenshot of Danny and I sitting here. And if you can go to our show notes and you can see all the bottles of mead behind Danny. And we'll just capture that right now. Smile. All right. Whoa.
Okay. So let's see. I know I've forgotten things. Oh, we also discovered that people were having so much fun hanging out at our place that they wanted to spend the night. And so we've now expanded into...
Wait, did they want to spend the night, or they just fell asleep after drinking so much mead that you had to put them up somewhere?
I'd like to think it was the farmer. But for those who can't leave, there are accommodation options available. Including the one that I'm proudest of, I think, is the old schoolhouse down the road that was donated by my grandmother's family. And we call it Binford Corner because the schoolhouse was on the corner. Anyway, the Binford heirs ended up selling that to Bee Weaver not long ago, and we've turned that into a fairly large space where we can host a significant number of people. I think we can squeeze 15 or so people in there if need be.
And it looks really nice. I encourage our listeners to go out to the website and take a look at the facility on your website. It looks really nice.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
How did you decide to get into the meadery, and is that successful?
Yeah, it's been very successful. We were very lucky. Okay, so I had been tempted to do this for a long, long time, but I decided pretty early on that I was so busy that I really didn't have time to devote to making mead on top of everything else that I had going on. So I really was searching for a partner, and lo and behold, there were a couple people who wanted to make mead that were searching for a partner, a honey source as well. We met Jeff and Chelsea Murray, and Laura and I fell in love with Jeff's mead, and it was clear that Chelsea was a pretty savvy marketer. And so we have partnered up with them and formed a new LLC and went into business as Wildflower Mead Company.
And that's Wildflower.
Yes, WILD and then capital FLYER, Wildflower. So you can think of it as like if a Texan's saying wildflower, it cuts both ways.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been quite successful. I was amazed. I was scared to death right after we opened, and the pandemic shut us down, and we couldn't sell meat except through a walk-up window. And it was popular enough that we actually made money with just a walk-up business. And of course, we had the outside space where people could get a bottle of meat and then go hang out. And during the pandemic, when people were largely shut out of other opportunities to go socialize, this outdoor setting where they could have some mead proved very, very attractive. Now, since then, we've now outgrown this space. We're about to expand operations in a larger facility.
Wow. Just for mead production.
Uh-huh.
Where's Wildflower mead available?
So you can order it online through the website, and we have the ability to ship it. So unless you want to visit us in Navasota or go to one of the locations in the Houston or Austin area that carry it, that's probably the easiest thing for people to do.
Well, that's really amazing. This is really fun because you've taken a beekeeping operation or the family's bee raising operation, and now you've expanded off into multiple different businesses based from bees. And I think that's a dream of many, many beekeepers.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. I didn't really know whether any of those little, what were in the beginning very small side ventures and experiments were going to succeed, but I think every one of them has.
You have a campground and you have raised tents. I mean, is there a season for that comes around?
Well, in Texas, it's actually probably most challenging for us during the heat of summer. During the heat of summer, unless you've got the shade of a tree or the shade of a tent, it can get to be pretty oppressive. So I would say that our busiest times for people coming and hanging out are probably spring and fall. But Texas has got a mild enough climate in the winter that, even now, there are people hanging out outside today, and it's, 62 degrees and blue skies. So can't beat that.
Well, that's the summer in Seattle area. So
yeah, right. Right.
It's all relative. Well, Danny, instead of being quiet in Navasota, Texas, you really developed quite a business that you've got carrying the Weaver name to greater places. That's fun to see. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to talk about?
Jeff, I think we've kind of covered it in a nutshell. We can expand on some of that if you want to, but I've tried to give you an overview of where we are and what we do. But we're still a beekeeping business at heart, and that will always be the soul of the company, I think. But we've expanded, and we've now got more and more people involved in appreciation of honeybees. We do educational programs for kids. Schools will come out and visit. We do educational programs for adults who drive up and organize tours out of Houston or over from Austin or down from Bryan College Station. So I'm proud of that because I think there's a hunger out there for people have. They want to learn more about pollinators and honeybees and the environment. So I'm pleased to be able to contribute that. And we get a surprising amount of return business in that area too.
I would like to have you back and talk to you more in depth about your queen rearing business in regards to the selecting for the varroa resistance. And I think that in and of itself would be a fascinating topic. And if you'd be willing to come back, we'll have you back at a later date for that discussion.
Be happy to do that, Jeff. Thanks.
That'd be real good. Well, Danny Weaver of Weaver Bee Farms in Navasota, Texas. We appreciate you being on the Beekeeping Today podcast today and look forward to having you back in a not too far future.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download and stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. Even better, write a review and let other beekeepers looking for a new podcast know what you like. You can get there directly from our website by clicking on reviews along the top of any web page. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their continued support of Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at globalpatties.com. Thanks to Strong Microbials for their support of this podcast. Check out their probiotic line at strongmicrobials.com. We want to thank Better Bee for their longtime support. Check out all their great beekeeping supplies at betterbee.com. Thanks to Northern Bee Books for their support of Bee Books Old New with Kim Flodham. Check out all of their books at northernbeebooks.co.uk. And finally, and most importantly, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on the show. Feel free to leave us comments and questions at Leave a Comment section under each episode on the website. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot, everybody.